Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen some pretty sweet new weapons added to Destiny 2 in the 4th year of the game's life, and in this video I wanted to showcase my 10 favorite legendary weapons from the past year. These selections may be on this list due to their strong performance, the fact that they're somewhat unique, or because I form some sort of subconscious attachment to them. And in most cases, it's probably a combination of the three. The weapons we're looking at will all be legendaries though, and the list is going to be limited to truly new weapons. No weapons brought forward from previous seasons of Destiny 2, and no returning Destiny 1 firepower. And yeah, this does exclude some extremely powerful weapons, but the goal is to focus on weapons that were designed from the ground up to be released during the year of Beyond Light. And one last disclaimer, this is my list, and my taste in weaponry can be unique in some cases. This isn't necessarily a top 10 best list, it's just the weapons that I've taken a shine to. But let's get things rolling, starting out with number 10. Code Duello is a solar rocket launcher that made its way onto the scene in Season of the Chosen as part of the Battlegrounds weapon set. And I think a lot of Guardians, including myself, latched onto this weapon initially due to the brand new perk that it brought with it. Lasting Impression. Instead of the rocket exploding on impact, the blast had a short delay. The payoff was 20% more damage and a bigger blast radius. A great perk, especially in activities where adds tend to pile up around the boss. And there's always that added benefit of being able to barrel stuff the enemy, touch off the rocket, and have time to safely get away. And while the perk can now be found on several other rocket launchers, for those of us who have been playing right along, Code Duello is probably the weapon that introduced us to the perk and its potential. So even if you've hung up this rocket launcher in favor of other options, it's definitely had its time to shine. Number 9 on my list is Season of the Chosen's Ritual, Pinnacle, Pursuit Weapon, whatever we're calling it now, Salvager Salvo. And honestly, this weapon could easily have been a lot higher on my list, but I'm just not a huge breach-load grenade launcher fan. I just personally don't find them to be a very satisfying weapon class, but holy jeez is this thing useful. It's got spike nades for extra impact damage, Demolitionist or Ambitious Assassin in column 1, and then Vorpal Weapon or Chain Reaction in column 2. A fantastic perk set that adapts to differing encounters and activities very well. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the only arc breach-load grenade launcher in the game that isn't sunset, adding to its rarity. The only facet that it really can't cover is suppression, since it doesn't come with blinding grenades. But it's a weapon with enough firepower and utility to get the job done in nearly any activity. Retraced Path is one of the most recently added weapons on this list, being released with the 30th anniversary content drop at the tail end of Season of the Lost. And even though this weapon hasn't had much time to establish itself, this is the first and only legendary trace rifle available in the game currently. We have a total of 6 exotic trace rifles, all pretty decent weapons and all situationally handy, but you can never run another exotic alongside any of them obviously. And while Retraced Path isn't as flashy or utility rich as its exotic counterparts, you're still getting trace rifle range, damage, stability, and accuracy out of it. The perk pool is quite nice though, with several good combinations that a player could make use of, regardless of whether you mainly play PvP or PvE. All with the added benefit of being able to run it alongside of your preferred heavy or kinetic exotic of choice. It's great to finally see a legendary trace rifle in the game, and here's to hoping that we get more flavors added in the future. Crowd Pleaser at number 7 isn't a terribly popular weapon, and maybe one you're surprised to see on this list, but I used it very heavily during the early days of Year 4. This is a Void Heavy Grenade Launcher that released with Beyond Light as a Gambit specific drop, and it's an adaptive frame, meaning 120 rounds per minute as opposed to the rapid fire frames at 150. And I do prefer the adaptives. The 150s do edge them out in terms of single target damage per second, but they pack a little more punch with each grenade, which does help out with the perk that made me take a liking to this gun, Chain Reaction, which was newly added with Beyond Light. A little bit more pop from each grenade made it a great ad clearing weapon. It had plenty enough power to deal with major targets, and while not the best at boss DPS, it was adequate. And if you didn't know, Nezarek's Sin is pretty much fused to my Guardian's face in PvE, so void damage is a huge plus. And while I'm sure not everyone took a liking to Crowd Pleaser as deeply as I did, I had this weapon equipped far too often to exclude it from this list. And it's still one that doesn't leave my inventory very often. At number 6, Chroma Rush. Since the sunsetting of my old dear friend Steelfeather Repeater, I've patiently been waiting for another Kinetic 720 auto rifle to surface and take its spot. In Season of the Splicer, Chroma Rush was added as part of the Override loot pool, and it did not disappoint. The base stats were slightly above average for the archetype, and the perk pool had a lot to offer. Heating up, dynamic sway reduction, moving target, or tunnel vision could really improve the weapon's stability, aim assist, and accuracy in Column 3. Column 4 had reliable damage perks, Rampage, Kill Clip, the freshly buffed Adrenaline Junkie. Or you could opt for utility perks in that column, like Thresh, Wellspring, or Tap the Trigger. This is a gun that is easily tailored to fit a player's preferences. Chroma Rush can perform very well in PvE as an ad clearing weapon, and can really do some work in the Crucible, benefiting from the best-in-class base 0.77 second optimal time to kill. This gun was a strong performer, and still is. I don't know of many auto rifle users who haven't grown to appreciate Chroma Rush. I've always had a thing for fusion rifles, and Glacioclasm was one of my all-time favorites. Unfortunately, I'm not as hot on it as I used to be since the systemic fusion rifle rework that occurred at the beginning of Season of the Chosen. But given the time that I spent with this weapon over the past year, there's no way I could leave it off the list. This is a Void high-impact fusion rifle available only during the Dawning seasonal event. It was initially introduced in 2020 during Season of the Hunt, and saw a slight tweak to its perk pool in 2021. Glacioclasm was just so reliable though. It served as my major buster in PvE content, and in PvP, this was my special weapon. I think I racked up more kills in the Crucible with Glacioclasm than with any other weapon over the past year. I'd been playing with fusion rifles for a long time up to this point, and developed a pretty good feel for playing around the charge time. But the weapon's still gotta perform, it's gotta be consistent. And Glacioclasm delivered. Currently, I am struggling with the longer charge time. I figured I could work around it, but it's proving to be too much for me to be comfortable with. And I can't say I'm a big fan of the change to a 5-bolt burst either. It just feels a little unnatural. And while this can still be a pretty decent fusion rifle, it's just not one that I prefer anymore. Which is sad, but I'll always remember Glacioclasm for what it was. What do you get when you combine the range and fire rate of an auto rifle with the stopping power of an SMG? Number 4, Shayura's Wrath. This is a Void precision frame submachine gun released in Season of the Splicer, and available through Trials of Osiris. SMGs as a whole do output some pretty decent damage in both PvP and PvE, but are generally limited by their range. With the right roll, Shayura's bypasses that pain point, stretching upwards of 25 meters before seeing damage fall off. And then, across the board, the base stats are very strong, and the perk pool is stacked with winners, making it a meta pick for any Crucible game mode, from 6v6 control all the way up through Trials, your pinnacle activity. This weapon can thrive. It's also a very strong ad clearing weapon in PvE. The hard-hitting nature of Shayura's, paired with the exceptional range and access to damage perks like Kill Clip, Adrenaline Junkie, or Harmony, allow it to hold its own in a wide range of activities. And for me personally, Void Primary, Nezarec Sin, don't mind if I do. But yeah, Shayura's Wrath is just all around a great weapon, and one that I've thoroughly been enjoying. Released in a season where fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles rule the day, I found myself unapologetically drawn to using a rocket launcher. Ascendancy is Season of the Lost's pinnacle weapon, and has quickly become one of my favorite heavies. There's just not much more I could ask for out of a rocket launcher. Quick launch and handling masterwork make it extremely agile. Impact casing provides a little bit more impact damage. You have your choice of Impulse Amplifier or Ambitious Assassin in Column 3, both solid perks. Then you have Chain Reaction or Explosive Light, which is the perk that really makes Ascendancy special. The Hothead Rocket Launcher and the Sunset Wendigo Grenade Launcher were the only other weapons ever to have access to this perk up to this point. Picking up an Orb of Power is going to buff your next rocket's damage by 25%, and max out the blast radius. So if you're running Argent Ordnance or High Energy Fire within a Charge with Light build, you're basically getting 2 damage buffs for the same action, allowing Ascendancy to output a very healthy chunk of damage per rocket. And it's a precision frame, so the rockets do intrinsically carry tracking. As I've said in the past, I like explosions. Explosions are fun, and Ascendancy delivers the explosions in a big way. Well, this one didn't take long to shoot up to number 2 on my list. The BXR-55 Battler is a weapon built in the light of the battle rifle from the Halo series, and came to Destiny with the 30th anniversary update. This is a solar 450 RPM pulse rifle, and 450s have been in a tough spot for quite a while. But the Battler has all the tools at its disposal to make it a truly elite primary weapon. For starters, the perk pool is packed with useful options. damage perks, performance perks, utility perks. They're all in there, and there's really no throwaway perks. On their own, they can all be useful in their own respect. Plus, you can find some very interesting perk combinations in here as well. In the Battler, while it is a 450 RPM pulse rifle, it's not a lightweight frame. This is the first of its kind legacy frame pulse rifle, so the Battler intrinsically has near perfect hipfire accuracy, while also seeing greatly improved stability and aim assist. And when aiming down sights, this weapon pulls you into a scope, completely eliminating any blind spots that could be caused by the weapon's physical frame. And while the zoom is a bit heavy, this does allow the Battler's range to stretch out to 40 plus meters. This is a weapon that performs very well from nearly any distance. It's strong, it's unique, and it's versatile. The Battler has quickly become one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. At number 1 for me, Null Composure, the Season of the Splicer Pinnacle / Pursuit weapon. This is a Void Rapid Fire Fusion, and when I reviewed it shortly after release, I wasn't terribly impressed with it. Then came the Fusion Rifle rework, that pretty much put Glacioclasm in the grave for me, but the results were flipped when it came to Null Composure. Rapid Fire Fusion saw a huge improvement. Bolts were increased from 7 to 9, their charge times were reduced, which left them as the undisputed king of single target damage per second within the weapon class. And while Null Composure may not have the raw damage output of a God-rolled Cartesian coordinate, it's right there in the same ballpark with high impact reserve selected. But it has Reservoir Burst as an option as well, which can make this weapon a very solid option for general ad clearing. And it's void, so it does support my Nezarec Sin addiction. Then in PvP, unlike the patient and calculated playstyle that I stuck to when running mainly high impact fusion rifles, I can be much more aggressive with Null Composure and play confidently while running and gunning. And the weapon feels very consistent from 15-ish meters when it comes to securing one burst kills. But clipping Guardians from a bit further out is not out of the question, especially if you have heating up procced. Null Composure is now basically my go everywhere, do everything weapon. And it may lose some of its appeal when Witch Queen is ushered in and Particle Deconstruction is ushered out, but Null Composure is undoubtedly the weapon that has solidified itself as my special weapon of choice at the end of the Beyond Light era. And that's my top 10 list. But I'd like to hear your take on things. What are some of your favorite weapons from Year 4? Drop them down in the comments. It's always interesting to see what other people are using because I'm sure your list does not perfectly line up with mine, and there were a lot of great weapons added over the course of Beyond Light. And if you did end up enjoying the video, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Any support you're willing to lend is always greatly appreciated. Link to the Ironworker Gaming Discord is in the description if you'd like to join a great community full of awesome Guardians. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this video. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.